They call you selfish the moment you say no, despite all you've done for them. Why does every little favor come with a crushing price tag? This is the dark psychological paradox of emotional debt, a system that forces you to constantly pay for normal human interaction.
Okay, let's just dive right into that, because that feeling, you know the one, it isn't just in your head, and it's definitely not some simple misunderstanding. It is a system, a carefully constructed and often totally unconscious mechanism that's really designed to keep you in a state of constant obligation. In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on this exact dynamic. We're going to dissect how this debt is manufactured, how it's enforced, and most importantly, how you can refuse to pay it.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to move through 6 key stages. We'll start by defining the paradox itself, then we'll unpack the psychology of these emotional price tags. After that, we'll expose the 3-stage mechanism that creates and collects the debt, we'll get into the motivations behind it, and then we'll arm you with strategies for defense. Finally, we'll land on the big idea. Your conscience is not collateral. So, what is this paradox really about? Well, at its core, it's that moment when a completely normal, healthy human interaction, an act of kindness, a simple favor, a bit of support, gets twisted into a transaction. Suddenly, it's recorded in some invisible ledger, not as a gift, but as a loan. A loan you never asked for, but now you're somehow expected to repay, probably with interest. This is the exact point where your own kindness becomes a liability that can be used against you.
And this really brings us to the central question we have to keep in mind through all of this. Just think about it. What if that crushing feeling of obligation, that awful guilt that makes you say yes when every part of you wants to say no, isn't actually a reflection of your character? What if it's all an artificial construct, a psychological illusion, expertly crafted by someone else for their own benefit? Let's dig into that.
To really get what's happening here, we need to define the terms. You see, like any toxic system, this one has its own language, its own unspoken rules. But once you learn to recognize the vocabulary and the tactics they use, the whole structure just becomes transparent, and that's when its power over you really starts to fade.
First up, let's be crystal clear about this term, emotional debt. The key word here, the one I really want you to lock onto, is manufactured. This is not a real debt. This isn't something that grows out of mutual respect and care. No, this is an artificial feeling of obligation, deliberately placed on you by someone who's decided to assign a huge unspoken cost to their own actions. It is, quite literally, a debt by design.
So how do they manufacture it? Well, they use this core tactic, psychological price tagging. This is the moment a manipulator attaches an invisible, massively inflated price tag to something that should be totally free. It's when a simple favor, like them giving you a ride, is later talked about like it was some monumental sacrifice. You've heard the lines, right? After all I've done for you, or you have no idea what I had to go through to do that. What they're doing is putting a huge price tag on a normal action after the fact, just to make you feel like you owe them.
So this really gets to the why and the how. What's the end game? It's not partnership, it's unilateral control. The manipulator wants to be the one calling the shots. And this kind of behavior, it's a hallmark of certain personalities, like narcissistic types who need constant validation, or martyr types who build their whole identity around how much they sacrifice. And they pull it off using 2 main tactics: scorekeeping, literally keeping a running tally of every single thing they've ever done for you, and guilt tripping, which is the emotional punishment they hand out when you don't pay up.
Okay, so we've got the definitions down. Now, let's get into the mechanics, because this isn't random. It follows a predictable 3-stage process, and understanding this pattern is the absolute key to dismantling it, because you'll start to see it happening in real time.
This cycle is brutally efficient. First, cost attribution. That's when they create the price tag. Second, debt enforcement. That's when they demand you pay up. And third, compliance. That's when you pay, usually just by giving in. And here's the kicker. Once you pay, the ledger gets cleared, but that just resets the whole cycle. It's basically guaranteed to happen again. So let's break down each stage.
Stage 1 is where it all begins, and it's the most subtle: cost attribution. This is where the debt is actually born. A manipulator does something normal. Maybe they cook you dinner, but they don't just cook dinner. They make sure to merge their own pain or inconvenience with the act. We call this emotional overlap. You'll hear the heavy sighs, the comments about how tired they are, the mention of their headache, all while doing the favor. See, they're not just giving you a meal, they're giving you a meal despite their incredible suffering. And that suffering, that's the price tag. This immediately hijacks our natural, healthy human instinct, the reciprocity principle. We're all wired to want to give back, and they know it. They're exploiting one of our best instincts.
Okay, so once that debt is planted in your mind, stage 2 kicks in, debt enforcement. This can happen minutes later or weeks later. They make a demand. They want you to do something or agree with them or just give them attention. And if you even hesitate for a second, they'll immediately cash in that IOU. Well, I cooked for you last night when I was so exhausted and now you can't do this one tiny thing for me? Boom, the connection is made explicit. That past favor is now the collateral for their current demand.
And of course, this leads right into the final stage, compliance. You, the target, are now feeling this intense psychological anxiety, this debt burden, and you just give in. But here's the crucial part. You're not complying because you actually want to. You're complying to get relief. Relief from the guilt, relief from the tension, and especially relief from the fear of being called selfish or ungrateful and ingrate. You make the emotional payment just to get your own psychological peace back. But in doing that, you've just validated their entire system. You've taught them that it works. So now that we see how this whole mechanism works, let's explore the psychological why. I mean, why does one person feel this need to create a system like this in the first place? And why is another person so vulnerable to it? It turns out there are really powerful psychological forces on both sides of this equation.
This lays out the psychological collision perfectly. On one side, the manipulator is driven by a deep need for unilateral control, for ego justification, they need to be the good guy in the story, and for what psychologists call narcissistic supply, which is just a constant craving for admiration and emotional power. But on the other side, the target isn't weak. They're driven by totally normal human needs. The biggest one is anxiety reduction, that gut-wrenching need to get rid of the guilt. Then there's our need for consistency. We want to believe the people in our lives are good, so we rationalize their behavior. And finally, we want to avoid cognitive dissonance. That's the deep mental stress you feel when you're trying to believe two opposite things at once, like this person loves me and this person is hurting me. Sometimes it just feels easier to pay the debt than to face that contradiction.
Okay, we have analyzed this thing from every angle. We know the what, the how, and the why. So now we're going to shift gears from analysis to empowerment. How do you actually defend yourself against this? How do you start dismantling this system in your own life? Here it is, your counterplay book. It's 3 clear, actionable strategies. First, you have to learn to refuse the price tag the moment they try to attach it. Second, you enforce a strict zero-tolerance policy for scorekeeping. And third, a more proactive move, you can practice immediate reciprocity to cancel out the debt before it's even on the books. Let's walk through these.
The first defense is also the most powerful one. You have to refuse the price tag. This is your countermove for their stage 1. When they do something and immediately attach their story of sacrifice to it, your job is to calmly and neutrally relabel their action. You're not arguing with their feelings. You are simply reframing their action as what it should be, a normal part of a reciprocal relationship.
And here is the exact tool you need for that job. When they say, "I went through so much trouble to do that for you," you can respond calmly with, "I really appreciate it. That was a normal part of our relationship, just like when I help you out." Or even simpler, that's what people in a relationship do for each other. See, this phrase doesn't start a fight, it completely neutralizes the transaction. It refuses to accept that inflated price tag and reframes the act as a gift, not a loan. Okay, your second line of defense, zero tolerance for scorekeeping. This is your tool for their stage 2 debt enforcement. So when the manipulator brings up something from the past to justify what they want now, "But I did X for you last month," you have to sever that connection. You say, "I appreciate what you did last month, thank you, but that is a separate issue from what you're asking for right now. Let's talk about this current request on its own." You are refusing to let them use a ledger against you. Each interaction has to stand on its own. And you know, a proactive way to get ahead of this is to practice that third strategy, immediate reciprocity. If they do something that feels like it might have a price tag, return the favor quickly and equally. They buy you coffee, you get the next one. This closes the loop before they can even try to hold it over you.
So after breaking down the whole system and building our defense, we've come to the final verdict. This is where we distill the one core truth you have to internalize to protect yourself from this dynamic for good. This isn't just a summary, it's the fundamental mindset shift you need to make. So let's bring it all together. At the end of the day, emotional debt is just the name for that psychological weight that you feel. It's the engine behind the whole system that makes you pay emotionally for every little thing, turning what should be a relationship into an endless, exhausting series of transactions.
The pattern is crystal clear now, right? They assign a high cost to a normal action. This hijacks your healthy natural desire to be fair, your reciprocity principle. This creates an artificial debt, and you comply simply to get rid of the anxiety that debt creates. It's a vicious, self-perpetuating loop.
But here's the good news. Awareness breaks the loop. Just by seeing the pattern, you can interrupt it. By actively refusing the price tag and by enforcing a zero-tolerance policy for scorekeeping, you are no longer a passive participant in this game. You are actively protecting your conscience from a moral obligation that was never, ever real to begin with. You are taking your control back.
And if you walk away with only one thought, let it be this one. The price tag they put on their actions has nothing to do with the actual cost. It is an artificial value they invent for one reason and one reason only: to control your conscience. And by controlling your conscience, they control you.
Your emotional labor is not currency. Your empathy isn't collateral, and your conscience is not an account for someone else to withdraw from whenever they feel like it. The debt was never real. You are not a bank.